Let's just start with the most basic question about pen testing. Why the heck are we doing it?
Pen testing is an important part of identifying the major security gaps that you have in your enterprise or in an application, right? So, some of the most severe risks that would be present with an organization or their product is why you would want to identify these things before the bad guys actually do it.
I think it's also a good feedback loop. You do some testing, you say, we need to improve this capability. And we'll pen test again and use it as a good tuning mechanism.
Having those regular check-ins and collaboration throughout, whether you're an internal team or an external consulting firm, that's an important piece of that puzzle because things can start to get lost.
There's all these different ways that you can use pen testing as a tool. So thinking about what is the intent and then how do you make it actionable?
If you focus on pen testing from an annual exercise perspective, you're not going to handle it very well. Taking the results of the current annual test, fixing some of those things and working on those from a program and continuously testing throughout the year. And then when you come back and you have that full scope pen test again, those are the organizations that are going to make the most progress.
Here's a good question that just came in from Larry Rosen. He says, ignoring the $99 bottom feeders, what do you think about some of the automated pen test services that are currently in the marketplace?
It sort of misses the point of pen testing, right? You're using the creativity of a human to do something that's not easily automatable. Maybe it's like a better black box testing tool, but it kind of misses the point.
Being able to automate and find some of the low-hanging fruit in a pen test only frees up the tester's time to get to the more creative aspects.
Back to another question that Brian Solari has. How can you get the best value out of your security program by using pen testing and crowdsourcing, bug bounty? Is there a right mix?
When you're not super mature, pen testing is a really good first step. When you get more mature and you realize that you're starting to get some diminishing returns on things like pen testing and your tooling, I think the things like bug bounty, I've had great success in the past with, really finding those hard to find bugs.
How do you select a pen test vendor and what questions must be asked to the vendor before hiring a pen test?
I've usually asked for like a sample deliverable is usually a start, but also just ask around. I think, we have this community in security and everybody has used, a vendor at least once is my guess.
It's beat the bad idea. You have to figure out how you can control this horrible idea. And this one is Reddit posts your organization is impenetrable and you welcome the challenge. How are you going to beat this bad idea?
You may need to start making some big investments in your maturity because you poked the bear. Right. Maybe that's a tactic to get money from your board.
Hey, this is probably a good way to highlight, we're not as secure as we are claimed to be, so we better get some more money and more attention where it should be from a budgeting and resource perspective.
Pay the adversary who hacked you for a report of how they did it in lieu of an actual pen test.
This is actually a good idea in terms of being able to pay bounties and encourage people to break your systems and get rewarded for it versus going and selling those things on the black market.
In order to whitelist the pen tester, configure the firewall to permit any and all incoming internet traffic on the perimeter interface.
I think you basically have to reverse course in a case like this because you got a lot of risk there.
And I'm going to go to this one from Ian Pointer. How can we scale a security assessment program without breaking the budget?
The world has a lot of great security people. So, look outside of the United States. Look in some locations you might not traditionally even think of as a place to outsource as well, too.
Automating wherever possible, right? With still that context of bringing in-house folks to be able to test your stuff on a continuous basis is gonna pay off much more than hiring an outside firm to do that on a continuous basis.
Good questions came in from Aiden from Sweden. How do you define the scope of the test in terms of depth and width to leverage the best values?
If you haven't done any of this before and you don't have a good visibility in your environment, doing something more broad and then sort of segmenting where you found the most smoke, because where there's smoke, there's fire, right? And then prioritizing what your most critical assets are in those kind of smoky areas of the environment, I think is pretty important, right?
All right, Matt, you have a what's worse conundrum for our two guests.
All right, so you're starting out looking at your third parties, and you need to either decide as a group that scoping doesn't matter and all third-party vendors should be tested without being notified, or just take their word that they're secure and they don't need to have a pen test done.
So the first one is a good way to get sued. The Computer Fraud and Abuse Act is like this wide. I think if you have to make that choice, I would choose not to get sued.
The second one is almost as likely for you to get sued, but from different people. Right? So I'm going to have to say that the second one is worse. But yeah, they both suck. We love this topic. Pen testing and purple teaming and assessors are, near and dear to our heart, as well as the blue teamers, tasked with, fixing these issues. And so PlexTrack is the platform to bring everybody together and collaborate throughout the entire process, identifying those issues, being able to assign them either to your ticketing systems automatically or with PlexTrack specifically as your tracking system, and then have those real-time analytics.
Last piece of advice, I'll report, do it with intent. I'll repeat that. The other thing is, like, pen testing is a great way to connect your theoretical security posture to the reality of the situation on your environment and your systems.